So of course, hello, welcome everybody to our community update for May 4th. I'm Marissa. I joined just a couple of weeks ago as the head of developer relations here. So super excited to officially take over as one of the hosts for our community updates. I'm actually going to, there we go. I'm actually going to jump right into a couple of stats for our community. So we have a total of 63 open source developers. And in the last 2 weeks, we have made 126 new GitHub commits. We've actually got 20 new community members that joined our Slack. And we have 80 new community members that have joined us that are spread across other platforms. This includes Twitter, maybe they followed us in GitHub, or they are new members to our meetup group. So welcome to all of our returning members, and of course, a special welcome to our new members that might be with us. Quick plan today is I'm going to give a few updates, and then we have a very special walkthrough from a community member. So the first update is on our documentation. We are currently working on improving our docs and actually the process that we use to publish them. So the team and I have put a lot of love into our documentation, but we know that they're not perfect. Documentation never is. And so as we do this overhaul, any feedback from all of you would be very helpful in this process as we update and create this overhaul in our documentation. Why is my, there we go, perfect. So just a quick reminder that we do have an upcoming minor release of 10.1. This release is planned for May 9th. Now for this release, and of course, any release that we do, we obviously aim to include all of our planned issues and features, but we are a small team, so primary priorities can pop up that may block some features or push them back to releases for another date. But these are the planned features for 10.1 as of right now. We plan to add support for Postgres as an open metadata store. We have UI and user profile page improvements, and we're planning on adding support for our JWT token generation for bot accounts. Now, I have included the GitHub issue numbers here, so feel free to look at those on GitHub, and you can track their progress as we move toward that upcoming release. Our next major release is 11.0. Some of the high-level planned features, I have 6 of them outlined here. We plan to add some custom attributes to entities. We're doing some column-level lineage. We're adding data quality tests, API, and UI improvements, of course. We're also going to be starting on data collaboration. This includes tasks and emojis. We're going to be doing improved policy authoring and roles. And the last one there is we're going to be doing some global settings for open metadata to configure to, Elasticsearch, Airflow, etc. Again, I have included the Git issue number for the ones that we have tracked already so that you can track their progress as we get closer to this release. So one last community update is to help the team and me track our questions from our Slack support channel. We've actually added this solved emoji in. So now whenever you ask a question to support, once you get a solution, moving forward, we would ask you if you could please mark your question as solved. So how do you mark your question as solved? It's super easy. What you would do is you hover over your question, and then you get a little menu that pops up, and the first option is to add a reaction. When you click this, you get your emoji menu pops up. That is that's the second screenshot that you see here. And if you just type in the search bar solved, it will come up as in your search results, and you can just select that emoji and it will mark your question as solved. So by doing this, we're hoping to add value to our community and give our team a really quick and easy way to track which questions we have that are still open and which ones we have already closed. Okay, so we have merged a major community PR from Cristian Osak from Bloomberg. They have joined us here today. So his PR added Postgres support, and he's actually here today to give us a short walkthrough of this. Cristian, I can hand off the screen share to you now. We're super excited to see your walkthrough. So I'm just going to, stop sharing. There we go. And I'll let you take over. I think the security settings have already been set up. Yep, you should. Perfect.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Happy you asked me to present. I hope I've built this in a way that's flexible enough to be adaptable to other database systems, which should help the community a lot. Um, in general, there isn't much change to the way OpenMetadata is going to be developed with this. It's just something more to the backend. So let's get right into PR. The first thing that needs to be added for any kind of database is a migration script. Um, it's quite easy to build one of these. It's just going off the existing one. I went off the existing MySQL one, for example, and adapted it to the syntax for Postgres, which is slightly different, nothing very big. And I think for a lot of databases, the syntax isn't going to be extraordinarily different. Something to keep in mind is that OpenMetadata does use JSON columns and then generates other columns from that JSON. Um, so the database you want to use should support this. Um, also note how these are stored in the file system. They're under Bootstrap SQL, and then each script is in a different folder that has the name of the JDBC driver used to access that database. You can also obviously have multiple scripts here. For now, it's just one because we consolidated everything since there were major changes in the last version. Now let's go into dependencies. Obviously, you'll need the dependency on the actual driver used to access that database. And I'll come back to test dependencies a bit later when we go into testing. This is also related to testing. We'll come back to that. To actually use a different database for queries, this extends the normal pattern used by DAO interfaces. So normally this would have only one SQL query attached to it, this update, for example, which replaces values in entity extensions. Now, a query like this uses some syntax that is a MySQL specific. Replace into doesn't exist in Postgres and in other databases. So for that, we can use connection aware SQL updates. There's also a connection aware SQL query because there's a difference in how GDBI treats those. So for MySQL, we just copy the old one to the new annotation and give it the connection type of MySQL. And we can adapt that to work for Postgres, which looks a bit different on how it handles conflicts. In this case, I give it a connection type of Postgres. This is all you need to do if you're adapting to new database. In the backend, what's happening is when OpenMetadata gets started, we inject the new SQL locator here, the connection aware annotation SQL locator, which is a very Java name. Basically what this does is going to JDBI and it replaces the normal way JDBI gets a query from an annotation with this new style that also keeps track of what kind of connection you have. Going to that, if I can find it, yep, it's right here. The SQL
And
locator. Yes.
Quickly, Christian, I think maybe explain what is JDBI.
All right. Yeah, JDBI is the library OpenMetadata uses to do database calls to connect to the database. And the way JDBI works, I think it's better if I show this in here. JDBI works by creating an interface and then on the interface creating functions which are annotated with a special JDBI annotation with the query that's going to be run behind the scenes for that function. And whenever you want to use this entity DAO, well, this has to be actually implemented for an entity like here for that category. But when you want to use this, you ask JDBI to create an instance of this interface. and we'll fill in these specific functions with the backing functions that will actually call the database. What the change I'm adding is doing is basically changing the way the SQL string is derived from the annotations.
Yeah, and one quick note there is, you know, lot of systems end up using object relational mapping libraries, where your SQL database objects turn into your objects within your language framework. But one of the challenges there is, when everything is working fine, everything is fine. But when things start breaking, you have to start getting deeper and deeper into ORM mapping layer. So this is one of the reasons why we have chosen JDBI. You can directly see the SQL that is running, right? You're essentially writing SQL and just in an easier fashion. So just chiming in. Cristian, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's important to mention. JDBI is extremely flexible. It's just like running any kind of SQL. ORMs, while great, can be limiting. Yeah, that pretty much covers what you need to do to implement a new database. Create a migration script, add annotations to queries that need to be annotated. You can see that some of them still use the SQL query, the default one, because these have a syntax which is basically default SQL. I can't remember. There's a name for default SQL. It's not called default, but they have a very common SQL syntax, and these don't need to be different for the kind of connections we use. Now let's quickly go into testing, because this is important for maintaining good quality of code. I think let's first go with testing structure. The testing structure changed a little bit. Now tests are split into just unit tests and integration tests. The main difference is integration tests require a database, a backing database to run and basically start up an instance of OpenMetadata and you test on that. So unit tests run normally, nothing changed. For integration tests, we run them multiple times, once for each type of database connection, which is defined here in the executions of Maven Surefire. We have an execution for Postgres, an execution for MySQL. And the way these are differentiated is using the system properties of JDBC container class name and JDBC container image name. If you go into the testing and go to the application test, you can see what's actually happening here. This is the test that all integration tests inherit from. To give some context, all integration tests will run through this code that I'm showing to set up the OpenMetadata instance. They'll get the container class and image name from system, and then they'll get the class associated with the name and create an instance and start it. This is all running on the back of test containers, which are Docker containers with the Java interface, basically. And what's nice about test containers, they have a subclass, which is called JDBI test containers, which basically offer a common interface for starting up and using JDBI databases, JDBC databases. And as you can see, we use the Postgres, JDBC DB container, and MySQL. Obviously, to run this test, you will need a Docker client running on the host machine, but most integration test platforms already have that, and GitHub integration already uses that. So yeah, that's pretty much all from my side. If there are any questions, I'm here to answer.
One of the comments there is, we used to use, so we want to run all the integration tests for all the backend APIs. In the past, we used to use embedded MySQL, and that was not stable. It's not a project that is kept up. Just test containers is a huge leap for how we are doing the testing. And we can do a lot more things with the foundation Cristian has laid.
We have a question from Stuart. Stuart, do you want to come off mute?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Great work. really beneficial for us. How is this going to bubble up into containers and Helm and all of that as an option? Is it going to bubble up into Helm as an option, maybe in the values file? As anybody, I don't know where that part of it gets built. I don't know if anybody's given much thought to that.
Yeah, so we will enable that as part of the Helm charts. So you can have two versions of Helm charts. One is with MySQL, another with Postgres. And you will have the similar set of environment variables that you can overlay.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, and then Postgres is, Cristian, I've been speaking to many people and they are super happy that Postgres is supported. They've been waiting for it. So there's a lot of love for this work.
Yeah, we're Postgres everything, so it's really helpful.
I see, right there. The world is divided into MySQL and Postgres.
As is Bloomberg, that's why we did it on there.
Next step is to add support for Solar instead of Elasticsearch.
Yeah, we need to kill Elastic on there. I'm sorry, we need Solar. Next thing.
That should be
PR's welcome, right? PR's welcome, and that.
Hey, I'd like to note too that Cristian would be in this room with us right now, but he delivered this while he had COVID, so you should thank him on there.
And I think with that, we need to give Cristian a round of applause in
awesome
in person for doing a wonderful job
Thank
on
you.
your PR and a great presentation. Thank you very much for walking us through. I have
Cristian, you also cleaned up a bunch of other code as well. Make the
you.
code base better. So thank you.
Well, since I was there, might as well do it. Thank you all for the cheers.
Of course. We love having everybody as part of our community, and we love it when you guys are able to do community contributions. It helps us, and it helps just the product move forward altogether. So I just have one more slide that I wanted to share with everybody before I just open the floor to any more questions that people may have. And that is, if Google Slides will cooperate with me, there we go. Is just to all of our community members, thank you all so much for everything you do. And this week we wanted to give a special shout out to these particular individuals for their contributions in April. So first we have Cristian, who of course we've just heard from, but we also have Siddharth, Sam, Abhishek, Stas, and Kevin. And we wanted to thank those guys so much for their contributions in April. And now I'll just open the floor if anybody has any particular questions for Suresh or Harisha.
Maybe you can go to our 0.11.
Sure. Let me see.
To get the questions flowing.
Let me just grab my slides here. Here we are. Any questions on the upcoming release?
Yeah, I was curious about something.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about migrating, on the subject of database schemas. When can we say that we will be backwards compatible going on from here? Because right now some versions have breaking changes, database wise or in other ways. It's like, is there a deadline or like a version like version 1 where you can say we're going to be fully backwards compatible from here on?
Yeah, so if you look at it, we have added from last 7 releases a lot of features, and last release was extremely tough. A lot of work went into it, and the curious thing there is we added least amount of features compared to many other past releases. All of that is because we are moving towards going to 1.0, where we want to call schemas, APIs, database backward compatible. So from 0.3 to 0.9, we were making only backward compatible changes, and then 0.9 to 0.10, it's a backward incompatible. You need to migrate from 0.9 to 0.10, and it's not going to be backward compatible. All of that, why we are doing that is we want to go towards a stable 1.0 release from where we will have everything backward compatible, right? And and any upgrades from those release onwards will be automatically taken care of for you. like how we did in the releases up to 0.9, where we would upgrade the database automatically and things like that. So that's the goal. So I think I don't know, Arsha, maybe another 2 releases to go towards 1.0.
Yeah. So yeah, I think what touch basing on what Suresh said, like we want to keep the API compatibility as well. That's another thing that's working towards. So far we did the migrations and everything else. Going forward, that's also another feature we want to, so that if you have a connectors, they still continue to work with the newer version of OpenMetadata. So yeah, that's a goal. Like even 0.11, for example, 0.0.10.1 will be automatically upgraded. The migrations will support that. For 0.9 to 0.10, anyone upgrading it, we have a migration support. We build a migration tool that will copy all your existing metadata, including description, tags, owners, roles, glossary terms, everything into your new metadata instance. But the goal is always going to be in the future, keep the backward compatibility and automated upgrades.
That's great. Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Pete Tamison. I had a quick question about your data quality tests. I just like some clarification on how that actually works. Do you define the data quality test, and then is it open metadata that's actually executing them and recording the results of that, or are you assuming that users are going to be running the tests and then you're just ingesting the results of those tests?
So it's a two-way. So what we want from OpenMetadata standpoint is, let's say you are starting your journey right now into the data quality. You can come to the OpenMetadata and define the test there and schedule to run those tests. So that at that point, everything is taken care of by the OpenMetadata itself. So you're defining the test within the OpenMetadata UI. You're scheduled them to run. That will be picked up by our automation frameworks and everything else. Run them, report the results back to OpenMetadata, and also will generate the notifications as well. But if you have existing tooling in data quality and you don't want to move to OpenMetadata, for example, you can still use the existing tooling and report those results to the OpenMetadata. What that benefit will give you is you have obviously will have a dashboard and the quality reported within the OpenMetadata. Also, it will generate the notifications to subscribe, either publish to Slack or send an email when a test fails.
I think, just to summarize, right, go to OpenMetadata, add a test. We have for ingestion, all this, we use Airflow at the backend. So we automatically schedule these tests as workflows that run on Airflow, collect the test results and publish it to OpenMetadata. You don't need to do anything other than when you say scheduling, you say test, and then I want this to be run hourly or daily or something like that. That's all you need to do, right? And then we will run all those tests and collect the test results. The second part is, say, for example, you're using Great Expectation and you already have written tests in Great Expectation and you're running Great Expectation to, test the quality and generate the test results. We can take the results from Great Expectation and then make it as part of OpenMetadata, right? Metadata.
Is it limited? Is the API for providing that data specific to Great Expectations, or so if my company has actually written its own tests, would I be able to upload like custom tests that we wrote that maybe were not written using Great Expectations?
Yes. So what we model, like for example, what you see from UI and everything else, it's kind of model close to what Great Expectation does, but you can define your own custom test there and provide results for that.
So what we can do is we can go over the APIs that we have. You can publish your test results into OpenMetadata.
So Suresh, I have a question for you. Would you consider adding an option for each table that there is an open metadata for a user, a certain kind of or class of user, to be able to upload a Python snippet that represents the QA checks for that specific data set, and then forward that and run that in the Airflow to report on the data quality?
So essentially, we are taking a code to run instead of testing. So right now, the spec says, for example, column not null is the test specification. We map that column not null to a code in OpenMetadata data profiler data quality framework.
Right, but you might want to have more complex validation, like say, if you have, say, a column in your data set that's country, you might have to validate that that's valid with respect to some list of countries that you're using for that data set, right? So you're quickly in like real world use cases, you're very quickly running into complex things where you need some code, some custom code to do those checks properly.
Yeah, what we did so far right now is to provide that functionality to the SQL itself. So you can write a SQL, custom SQL, and define a custom metric for that and run operations. Let's say, for example, you want to calculate the number of trips that taken per day. That might be joining 2 or 3 tables. You can give that and put a wait condition saying that, this is what I want. And we will run that query. And if the condition fails, we report as fail, why it failed. If it succeed, why it succeed. That's option that we have right now. But we can definitely look into, having code itself.
I might want to be able to say, I don't know if it actually exists, but let's say I have one HTTP service for all of Bloomberg that defines what a country is. And I want to be able to call that and make sure that it's legit,
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, I think. Yeah.
Or the output of this data is some model, and we're actually checking for the error efficiency of it, where we're going to need the SQL to be able to grab the data, yes, but we're going to be able to need to do like a volatility envelope over a particular time range and make sure that during each one of these consecutive years, rolling windows, that it's not out of a 10% margin. So we're going to need a little bit of code and a little bit of SQL together. We should need what we need.
Yeah, I also think that coming from Uber experience, reporting to compliance agencies and all of that, there are some formats and standards and testing for correctness and all of that. That entire thing cannot just sit in SQL. So I think we'll need a lot more richer testing and validation to approve, let's say, reports that are generated and things like that. So totally, understand the requirement. I think we can definitely collaborate on this and continue to add richer and richer testing experience.
So Peter, did your original question answered with APIs being open?
Yeah. Specifically, the latter option is what I was more interested in. We're already running our tests using another product that's not Great Expectations, but I would love to be able to sync the results of those tests and what tests we're running with open metadata. It would even be great, like if there was some sort of, for each data source, we could say something like maybe a data quality score, or something like where we could actually just indicate like that it has been tested and what give it a score or something like that. But yeah, sounds like we can do what we need though, using the APIs you provided. Thank you.
And Peter, we can actually spend some time with you to get it going, and then maybe data quality score is a metadata aspect that is not available. We can add them. Now, in return, you could help us write a document on here is how we did integration of quality, right? Metadata into open metadata using the API. So that way, this would be super beneficial for the community.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I think given we are focusing on the data quality test in point 11, it would be good to have that discussion. Hopefully next week, we can touch base and understand what's the payload that looks like when you're doing your own custom test, Peter.
So I just wanted to get to Stuart. He's had his hand up for a minute or two. So
yeah, I just wanted to follow up on this discussion. I haven't looked at the API, so my apologies. But I know there was an enumerated list of test types. Is that expandable? Like when we make the API call, can it be our enumerated list of tests? Fantastic. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Can you drill down on number 5 a little bit more on there? What you expect on that, Suresh? Authoring and roles. Are you going to use another tool on there? Are you going to plug into OpenID for roles? You're going to plug into LDAP? You're going to reinvent it internal because that's yet another system maintained. I mean, can you give me a little details on number 5?
Yeah, so Harsha chime in because Harsha is the expert here. I'm just a backend coder. Initially, right, we were only allowing permissions, right? Our permissions were built based on just either you're an owner or you're not an owner or an admin. And so we have defined roles. There are a couple of kinds of roles that we have defined, and this is internal to OpenMetadata, right? So we have not integrated for roles externally, because internal to OpenMetadata, there could be roles like data consumer, data steward, I don't know, compliance, governance, related roles. So these are data related roles. And right now, these are roles that are defined within Open Metadata. Now, there are a couple of things that we have also done. When a user is created, an organization can say all users that are onboarded onto Open Metadata get a certain role. For example, data consumer as a role. Then the second thing is there are roles that can be associated with teams. Let's say there is a team that is team of data stewards. And so they have a data steward role associated with the team, and anybody who becomes part of the team will inherit the role of the team, say data steward, right? So there are default system-wide default role, and then there are roles that can be associated with teams, and being member of that team, you will get that role. And then, there are other roles that you can define, which, you can attach it to individual users, right? As their needs change. So all of these things in Open Metadata, no external integration. Couple of things. A role is a set of policies. And so a user can have multiple roles, a team can have multiple roles, a role has multiple policies, a policy has a set of rules, which will provide you access control kind of policies. Or we also have a lifecycle policies for data management. But currently we are focused on access control policy, which have set of rules that will say allowed or denied for certain kinds of operation. An example of that is a user can update the description, but he cannot add a tag. Or a user can approve a tag, right, of a certain type. Things like that are all part of policies and rules under the policies. So that is sort of where we are. And right now, we initially started with something that was not that clean. Every role to policy was one-to-one relationship. And then we were leaking certain abstractions like who the user is, what his role is, all the way to the rules, which rules don't need to know. So we essentially reduce the leakage of abstractions through different layers. So rules know what they need to know. That's it. Policies know what they need to know, and then roles know what they need to know. That's it, right? So that's what we have done. But we would love to get some feedback on, for us, right? If there are roles and policies that are available outside, I think our schema was designed by Matt from Uber, and he looked into cloud providers, their roles, their policies, and so our metadata modeling and the schema is rich enough to incorporate external tools, definition of roles, policies. So we would love to see if you want to centralize it, we can actually ingest it from an external system. And it is much like ingesting any other metadata for us, or getting user team related information in a specific setting. We could definitely look into that. Sorry, a long answer, but wanted to catch you guys up on what we have done and what it is.
One thing I want to add is the pluggability comes in. We have an authorizer as an interface. So all of these yes or no answers comes from that particular interface. So one can actually write your own custom authorizer that can talk to your own policy store or whatnot.
So we could use a Ranger plugin, right?
Exactly.
Right there if we want to.
Yep.
We would kind of need to, because just remember, not all data is created equally, and we need to permission everything.
Yep.
So that this way we can really then add permissioning at a Trino Presto level, at catalog levels on there, and even potentially down to table levels too, because some people can't even see metadata or people can see it and can change it, but that would be the best on there.
Yeah, so that authorizer kind of inspired by our previous Ranger integrations from Hortonworks days. So it follows like we will ship the default one for the open source, and then there is like Apache Ranger authorizer that's can pluggable or Apache Sentry. So we can look into the interface and improve any feedback is there.
Okay. Yep.
Stuart, go ahead.
I forgot to lower my hand. That's my bad on me.
Did we have any other questions today? If not, I can give you guys a little bit of your time back so that you can continue to hopefully contribute to our community.
Great work. Great project.
Thank you for
thanks.
attending, and thank you, Cristian. Awesome work.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
One
everyone.
quick thing, please come to the Slack channel and engage with us if you have any such questions. So it doesn't need to wait till like a bi-weekly meeting. Since we have discussion ongoing, it will be great to get this feedback early on. So anything related to data quality, anything, we will take the feedback and work on the design. Thank you so much.
Hey, Marissa, can you go back to that slide on there? So yeah, exactly. Because our comms department likes to do their own communication out Bloomberg channels publicly. And I'm sure Suresh is going to like that too as well. A little cross-pollination. Just let me screen capture. Let me hope this print screen.
Maybe you can send the slide over.
Yeah, I was just going to say I can actually send you a copy of the slides as well if you would like to.
That would work even better. That would be amazing.
Yeah, of course. I'll do that. It'll come out better quality, I think, for you guys.
Yep. Then I'll send you a link to our PR and you can use that too as well.
Okay.
Awesome.
Our public release on there. Okay, thanks.
Thank
All
you.
right, wonderful.
Bye.
Okay, guys. See
Thanks,
you
everyone.
later. Thanks for
Bye-bye.
coming.
Thank you.